So a week ago, I was browsing through my backlog looking for a game that I could beat in under 10 hours. There's many games that would fit this criteria, but one game that I had in my backlog that looked super interesting was Atlas Fallen, or Atlas Fallen Rain of Sand. I'll discuss in the next section what that Rain of Sand part means, but once I set my eyes on the game, I jumped in and had an absolute blast with it. And although I wouldn't say it was amazing or anything, it was an enjoyable experience that respected my time, and I was able to beat it in just 7 hours. Today, I wanted to discuss why you should play Atlas Fallen in 2025 by discussing the game's open world, its combat, and its story, of course without any spoilers. Also, if you enjoy this type of content, please consider subbing to the channel and dropping a like, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Atlas Fallen is a AA action RPG that's set in a world overtaken by the reign of one god, known as Thelos. The game's world is an alluring fantasy one, filled with illustrious sand dunes and beautiful mountainscapes painting the pavements of a game that is focused on combat and traversal above all else. The game released around a couple years ago and came out to mixed reception, with many complaining of its slow and repetitive combat, its less than stellar enemy design and variety, and a story with writing and voice acting that wasn't great even for a AA studio. In response to this reception, sometime last year, the developers dropped a major free overhaul update of the game called Rain of Sand, which is why the game now has that subtitle attached to it when you look for the game in storefronts on any platform. This update did a lot to fix many of the problems that plagued the game at its launch, with improvements made in pretty much every aspect of the game. Just to highlight the main changes that came with this gargantuan update, the open world of Atlas Fallen was expanded and improved. New enemies and bosses were introduced, in addition to the fact that new quests and an entire campaign overhaul is also present with this update. It's even got new voice actors for the protagonists in the game, in addition to a new Game Plus mode that unlocks a completely new difficulty mode. With all of that said, let's actually discuss the major aspects of the game, first starting with its open world and exploration. The open world of Atlas Fallen is one of my favorite aspects of the entire game. The game is set in a vast desert filled with settlements varying from small camps created by a band of hunters to a jaw-dropping temple with fantastic architectural design housing the priests of Atlas's world. Although it may seem at the forefront that the game is completely in a desert with no other variety, it does indeed offer different areas to traverse, such as an entire underground city, in addition to more typical grassland areas atop of mountains that look absolutely fascinating. The world design of Atlas Fallen is definitely one of its strengths, and it excels in making an open world that truly does tell the story of the powerful god that reigns over all of the land and the people that inhabit it. Some of the structures are truly jaw-dropping, and others tell stories of a world that was so much more but was destroyed by the greed and leadership of a figure that did not care at all for its people. The great open world design of Atlas Fallen is what makes the exploration here such a treat. The main way you'll be traversing through the gigantic open world is through sand surfing around everywhere, which is really as fun as it sounds, as you'll pick up speed and momentum the longer distances you go, which makes traversing a fast-paced and exciting experience. Utilizing the dash you also have unlocked allows you to access areas that seem unreachable, allowing you to cross large gaps and get yourself to entirely new locations and enemies. A quick note about the game's exploration. I really only did the main quest of the game, and that's simply because I don't think that the game's side quests or characters provide anything that great, with many of them just simply being fetch quests or focused on slaying enemies, which you'll do either way. If you stick to the main quest for the most part, I think you'll never get bored in your time exploring this vast open world and glaring upon its truly illustrious vistas. Now, this aspect is for sure my favorite aspect of the entire game. The combat of Atlas Fallen isn't anything complex or mechanically impressive, but it's really a fun hack and slash oriented game that provides you with great customization in how you approach the combat, with an enemy variety that is quite great for the most part. The game's combat is entirely focused on the power of the gauntlet that you wield, which provides you with the ability to equip a primary and secondary weapon. The game's combat is quite fluid, with you chaining attacks using your primary and secondary weapon, in addition to the power that you gain through crafting yourself a large variety of essence stones. It is with these essence stones in particular that the game's customizability in terms of combat is presented. Essence stones are able to be crafted or acquired through fighting formidable enemies all across the vast landscapes of the game's open world, and all of them provide you with passive and active abilities that you can utilize to craft builds that fit your own wants for a playstyle. In addition to these stones, the game's armor sets are also infused with effects that will provide even more variety to the game's combat system, providing you with nuance through your entire experience with the combat. I really enjoyed my time messing around with the different essence stones I collected, and in terms of armor, I really just used ones that I thought looked the best, but they all provide various abilities that can help you lean your character towards a particular playstyle. Although the combat is super fluid and quite enjoyable with a sense of impact with each hit and shattering of your enemy, it's really the game's revamped enemy variety that truly makes the combat as engaging as it is. The game's bosses and mini-bosses, in addition to just the normal enemies, are all extremely well designed, with each enemy having certain areas you must shatter first before you're actually able to destroy the enemy at its core. It's an enjoyable combat loop, and it provides a sense of challenge that I think really adds to the overall feel of impact with the weapons and the way in which you approach each combat encounter. The parrying also feels fantastic, with several parries against a boss continuously allowing you to shatter them, which is essentially just freezing them to allow you to utilize the abilities of your gauntlet to their fullest capacity to unleash a devastating blow to your enemy's health. Overall, the combat system of Atlas Fallen is great, and although I think it would definitely become repetitive if you played too much of the game's side content, by sticking to the main quest, I think you'll really enjoy the game's combat throughout your entire journey with the game. Now to discuss the game's story. This section will be brief as there will be no spoilers, and honestly I don't think there's really that much to say here. The game's story is quite generic, and although some of the voice acting is quite great, especially that of the protagonist, it's not something to write home about. It's got the atypical narrative of a desolate world that needs to be liberated from the tyranny of a god, and you as the protagonist are the only one actually able to liberate it through the unknown yet great power of the gauntlet that you wield throughout the entire game. The game's presentation is mainly just dialogue, but the few cutscenes also highlight the fact that the game is definitely double A, as the facial animations and overall look of the cutscenes is very reminiscent of games from the 7th generation of consoles. The game does sometimes have these really good looking hand-drawn cutscenes with voice acting, and they are utilized for the most important parts of the game's story, and are probably the best I think that the game has to offer in terms of its story component. Overall, in my opinion, the story of Atlas Fallen is average at best, and it's really just a vehicle used for the combat and the exploration of the open world to truly excel. But its own characters and narrative is quite lackluster in pretty much every department. Well, to conclude, I think that you should play Atlas Fallen, mainly due to the fact that the game has a great open world with fun exploration and a super engaging and customizable combat system. The game is on Game Pass as well if you do want to try it out through that avenue, and the game often goes on steep sales, as I purchased the game a while ago for just $5, and for that price or even $20, I think you're definitely going to get your money's worth, especially if you're a fan of action RPGs generally. Anyway, that's all from me for today. If you did enjoy, please consider subbing to the channel for more content like this, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.